Hi everyone, and welcome back to Mishi Cat Yoga. It's me, Michelle, your Mishi Cat. Today our class is going to be more on inversions and hand balances. So yes, inversions mean we are upside down, but no, don't be scared. We're gonna have our handy dandy props. Make sure you got your blocks, those nice soft ones. If you got the hard cork ones, that will do too. It'll be really supportive. Just might not be as comfortable on your body. So make sure you got your blocks, your mat, a comfortable area where you're going to be free from distractions. I know our animals love to join us on the mat, so just be extra careful when we are practicing these balances and inversions that we don't fall and squish our puppies or kitties. Okay, so we are going to be also combining this lesson with our plant medicine. One of the plants that I highly suggest working with, especially with our inversions, is Ginkgo Biloba. I personally use the Ginkgo Biloba as a supplement when I was experiencing some vertigo. It happened to me a while ago. I would randomly just kind of get that vertigo, whether sitting, whether standing, or coming up from laying down. You know, those times that vertigo can come sneak up on you. And taking that supplement in the morning really helped those issues of vertigo clear up super quickly. This is not something that you're going to want to take every single day, just on occasions. The ginkgo really helps our cognitive aspects of our body. So they say that the ginkgo can help with our memory, and it can help maybe even with those cognitive disorders such as maybe Alzheimer's disease. Of course, improving our cognitive function, kind of focusing in on the brain, the memory. It's going to help us clear some of that. Maybe it's foggy, maybe it's brain fog, maybe it's the vertigo. The Ginkgo Biloba will help with that, as well as it's full of antioxidants like most of our herbal remedies or our plant medicines. It's going to open up our blood vessels, get more circulation going in through our body. And that's really important whenever we are, especially we're upside down, we're kind of turning that circulation, that whole system on its head, quite literally. So getting yourself some ginkgo would help in that. Ginkgo biloba usually comes in a pill form. We want to be sure to only make sure we're ingesting the leaves of the ginkgo tree. Any other part, the seeds or the bark or the stems, is going to totally cause an opposite effect here. So instead of clearing up our vertigo and bringing us relief from a little dizziness, it's going to cause the dizziness. So make sure we're only ingesting the leaves of that Ginkgo biloba tree, which is actually one of the most oldest living things on this planet. It's basically a fossil. This tree has existed for over 350 million years. Yes, 350 million years. This tree, this living plant, has been on this planet. So find yourself some Ginkgo biloba. If that's something that you're interested in, a nice herbal supplement, be sure to read all of the contradictions of that plant medicine. If you are going to ingest it, be careful, especially if you have the diabetes or any other heart issues. Just be clear on whether or not that pill, that supplement, that Ginkgo biloba herbal remedy is good for you. Always be sure to consult your doctor to double check. All right, so we're going to make it onto our mat here. Get yourself ready. Get those blocks. Get yourself a mat, nice stable surface, and we'll get started in just a moment. All right, welcome back to our practice. Today we're going to start on our hands and knees in a tabletop position. So your hands can always even be on these blocks if you'd like, or they're all the way down on the floor, wrist right underneath of our shoulders. We're going to just find a little lion's dance, sway the hips side to side, let the head go the opposite way as well. So when your hips go to the right, maybe your head goes to the left, hips go to the left, head goes to the right. Keeping your gaze down here, notice that my neck is coming straight out of the spine, trying to keep it there, moving the spine in like a snake-like pattern here. And then we'll come back through to center, finding our cat-cows, belly dropping, chest lifting, heart reaching forward, gazing straight forward or up. Exhale, tug the pelvis round through the spine, tuck chin into the chest. A few more like that, breath to movement, belly drop, chest lifts, big breath in. Exhale, tuck and round. And we'll go 2 more like this the whole time you're breathing in, belly dropping, chest lifting. Whole time we're breathing out, rounding in the spine. After that last one, we'll come back through to neutral. Take a seat back on our heels. And if this doesn't feel good for you, you can always find those blocks, put them under your sit bones. That'll help take some of the weight off of your ankles or your knees. You can even sit on your bottom leg straight across, not that serious. However, if you feel the most comfortable. So after those cat-cows here, we're going to work on our wrists a little bit. In the arm balances, we're heavily on our hands. So we want to make sure we have this wide hands. We're gripping through our fingers, the whole bottom part of our hand. So we're just going to bring our hands out in front of us here, fingers facing up, and then face the fingers down. So just fingers facing up and then down. Make sure we spread the hands nice and wide here as we do so. The nice and wide with the fingers. And go a little mindfully slow here. So we're not just flip-flopping them around just because I said so. We're really feeling into the wrist here as we find flexion, which we're going to be heavily in. Take maybe a little extra time in this extension of the wrist. Now, bring the fingertips to face each other and interlace those hands. We're going to take the palms to face down and the back of the hands to face up. The left elbow is going to point down and kind of pulling that hand down. So we're creating that flexion of the right wrist. I'm just holding it down here, putting a little bit of pressure. And as we warm up our wrist, we want to make sure that we are also practicing self-care. So we can see that our wrist is pretty close to our face. And as we take a couple deep breaths into that space, maybe we want to whisper thank you or whisper words of encouragement to that wrist since we're going to be on it today. Or maybe even plant a little kiss on it. And then go ahead and switch out those hands, pulling them down on the opposite wrist now. And again, we don't want our wrists to be jealous of each other. So whatever words of encouragement or signs of love that we gave to the first wrist, go ahead and do the same thing to this wrist. And then we're going to create just like a wave-like motion here. And it can be exaggerated and it can be really big, or you can kind of stay small and just kind of switching through the wrist here. Whatever you'd like. I think it's a little fun to kind of do that wave motion. So we're getting into the fingers, so we're getting into the knuckles, the wrist. Now we're going to place the back of the hands together, release the hands, fingertips face down, backs of the hands pressing together, elbows out wide. Those fingers are going to reach towards yourself, towards your heart, and then away from it. So just kind of rocking the fingers towards you and away from you here. Keep actively pressing backs of the hands together. Spread the fingers really wide, pressing the backs of the fingers together as well. And release all of that. We're going to find this kind of flicking motion. Just flicking side to side. And then as we can see, when our fingers kind of spread when we're flicking here, we're going to turn this into more of like an octopus shape. I've been binge watching a lot of nature shows on the octopus lately. So I found this stretch to be quite interesting, similar to this. So fingers are going to face down here. We're going to glue them together. And then just kind of how an octopus swims, spreading the tentacles wide and kind of bursting yourself up. So just kind of find this little octopus-like wrist stretch here. Spreading the fingers as we lower and then bringing them together like we're picking something up. And you notice it kind of looks like a little octopus swimming around, possibly. All right, and then we'll release that. Just take a couple of regular wrist circles. If you feel inclined, maybe invite the elbows to circle as well. So continue with the wrist, but maybe roll through the elbows as well. And then we'll take it to the other side, roll the wrist out the opposite way. And if we invited the elbow circle, we'll go ahead and do the elbows the opposite way as well. And release. We can stay here on our seat or on our shins in our hero's pose Virasana, or we can come to our Sukhasana seated pose. We're going to grab both of our blocks now. Reach the arms to a T position. Right arm is going to go up overhead. Left arm is going to go behind you. We're going to face these ends of the blocks so they can tap each other in the back. Inhale, we're going to open them up through the T position. Exhale, we're going to reach back and tap the tops of the blocks together. Inhale, they're open, and exhale, finding those Gomukhasana, our cow face arms, just going back and forth here as we switch. Tops of the blocks can tap or reach towards each other as much as you can. Inhale to switch. Exhale to find the tap. Continue. Let's go 2 more times to each side. Nice, and after we finish that, we'll just take our blocks over here to the top of our mat or the side and just take them out of the way for now. We're going to come down onto our block or onto our backs. All the way down on our backs, we're going to make sure we have one block handy, maybe middle of our mat as we lay all the way down. Once we get here, we're going to separate the feet about as wide as the hips. We'll grab for that block and place it between our forearms here. So between the forearms, the palms are facing each other. Now, once we get the block into place, we're going to flip the palms to face the ceiling. We're going to practice for our Bakasana, our crow pose. We're going to start on the ground. So engaging our core, we're going to reach our hands to touch the ground behind us, and we're going to pop up onto the toes here. Inhale breath is this. Exhale, we're going to crunch, tap the elbows to the tops of the thighs or the knees. Hold here. Keep engaging on that block. Try to keep contact with your elbows on the thighs. Inhale breath, we reach it long. Fingers tap and toes tap. Exhale, hugs it in. Take an extra breath here, in and out. Flex through the fingers. Palms are facing up. Imagine us on our hands doing this pose. Inhale breath to lengthen. Exhale to crunch. Now consecutively 5 times. Inhale, lengthen. Exhales, crunches it in. 4 more. Spread the palms facing straight up to the ceiling. Keep your toes actively engaged. Last 3 here. Last 2. And last 1. Gonna release the block. Just finish those crunches. We'll bring our block off to the side for now. Reach down a little bit towards the end of your mat because we're going to find our halasana, our plow pose now. So coming all the way onto your back, let's just kick the soles of the feet up to the sky. Hands on either side of your hips. Feel your low back flush to the ground. Those feet, you can spread the toes wide. You can maybe wiggle them out a little bit. Our hands are going to be pressing right into the ground, right on either side of the hips. So maybe this is our first bus stop, and maybe this is where we are going to stay today. If it feels good, press into the hands. Start reaching the toes over your head. Use your core strength here. If you'd like to bring your hands to the low back, hands can find your low back. Hugging those elbows. You might have to wiggle your whole body around, hugging the elbows, and then reach the toes overhead. If it feels better to have your legs open wide, feel free to do that. Try to get some space between your chin and your chest. And if that was an easy way to enter the pose, if you need to get some momentum, you're always welcome to find a little rock and roll here. Once we rock and roll, those hips will get some momentum to come up. And we can be holding our hips, we can be having our hands on the ground, or interlace the hands to dig the pinky edge of the hands into the ground. Bring the hands to the ground, slowly roll all the way down. And once you do, bring your feet to the ground and reach the arms overhead and open up the legs, butterfly, soles of the feet together, knees open wide. Bring your arms overhead. Maybe you interlace the hands, or maybe grab for opposite elbows, wrist or forearms. Taking a big breath here, in and out. And now we're going to go for it again, bringing the feet back underneath, planting them on the ground, hands on either side of your hips, toes reach up to the sky, back to that halasana, our plow pose, however you like. Maybe it's a rock and roll. It takes a little bit of momentum possibly to get those hips up, to capture the hips into the hands. And remember to hug the elbows in. So your whole body can kind of be flailing around however you need to get those elbows closer together. Chin stays towards the chest, head stays center. From here, we stay in plow, where we're coming in to our shalabhasana, our shoulder stand, gluing the legs together, bringing the toes up high to the ceiling. Try to get your ankles and your hips and your shoulders all to be in a nice line. Keep walking your hands up the back. Squeeze the glutes, press the hips forward. Hold it as long as you can. Bring the hands down to the earth and slowly roll through the spine to come all the way back down. Since we were in that rounded position, let's find a little bit of a contradiction here coming into our fish pose. So we can either pop up onto our elbows or even take a block underneath of our heart. And if we're in the fish pose, we'll just bring our hands under our body, squeeze the elbows in, squeeze the shoulders, lift the chest, and the head falls back there. Taking some deep breaths, or we're laying on that block in between the shoulder blades and releasing the head back so our heart is open a little higher here. And to come out of that fish pose, we'll lift our head first. We're on our elbows already, or if we're on our block, we'll bring the elbows under us. And then press yourself all the way up into a seat again. We have our Salamba, Sarvangasana, our shoulder stand where our feet were straight up in the air. And then we have our halasana, which was that plow pose, bringing the feet just over the head. It doesn't matter if they touch the ground. They probably won't the first couple of times. If you want to even send a block, or you have a bolster or blanket something back there. If you really want your toes to touch, you can bring that something over your head there so your feet might have something to land on if they're not meeting the ground. Next, we're going to go into the heavy hitter. That heavy hitter, that big pose, that Sirsasana, our headstand. So know that there's multiple different ways to approach these. Headstands can be supported with our hands and elbows. They could be like a tripod, just only the top of your head and your hands touching. Or we can also find ourselves upside down with full support from our blocks and or a handstand helper if you have one. There's an amazing one called Feet Up, or if you just Google search or Amazon search any of those handstand helpers, that's a nice elevated contraption that you can bring your shoulders on, be fully supported. I have one. I will show you examples of it at the end. All right, so first to prepare, we're going to find our rabbit pose. I'm going to show you a couple ways with and without the blocks to do that. So just without the blocks, the shape is going to look something like this. We're starting in our Virasana Hero's pose. We're going to keep our hands on the ground for this first one. There's many other variations we can do to kind of stretch out the shoulders as well. But first we're going to go like this. Hands come down right in front of your knees here. We're going to take a deep breath in, and on the exhale, tuck the chin all the way into the chest. All the way into the chest. Really rounding that spine or that upper neck. Now we're going to bring the top of our head straight into the mat. Those hips are going to need to lift up. So as we continue to press the top of our head into the mat, our hands are here on either side of our head to help us stay supported. Hips are going to lift up so they're over top of the knees. So we're just keep pressing the head into the ground, shifting it forward, and pause there. So that's one way. Another way is to kind of prep for that Sirsasana headstand is to bring our elbows down where our hands were. Make a little cradle with your hands. Maybe you want to interlace them or maybe just put one in the other. The pinky edge is going to be down, thumbs are up. Now your head is going to be right here. Back of the head is going to be cradled by these hands. And then again, tucking the chin a lot, top of the head into the ground, and lifting the hips up. Another option is to bring those blocks down here. I would say probably the lower, the middle setting, or maybe the higher setting, depending on the length of your neck. So those fingers are going to go right behind the blocks, and just like before, chin to the chest, top of the head's going to go right in between the blocks. Their shoulders are going to rest on top of these blocks. So chin to the chest, crown to the ground. Might want to lift those blocks a little higher. So they fit right there on the shoulders. Keep your hips lifted over the knees here. Top of the head is pressing into the ground. And those shoulders are fully supported on the blocks. That just gives a little bit of weight coming out of the top of your head if it's too much pressure on there. So that's our rabbit pose, a good way to start to get a little set up for our headstand. And maybe that's all that you're going to take from this class today, and that's totally great. Just feeling what it's like to get your body inverted, the head all the way down, the heart over the head, or the hips over the heart. Anytime our hips are over top of our heart, then that's an inversion. So even technically in your downward facing dog or a rag doll, when you're just folded forward, your hips are higher than the heart. That counts as an inversion. So I suggest to not wear your hair on the top of your head for this class, because that's where we're going to get a lot of our action, is going to be the very top of our head. So first we're going to do our headstand with the blocks. So we're going to come from that rabbit-like shape. Let's bring our hands right by the block here. We're going to go for the tripod version here. Chin to the chest, crown into the ground. Shoulders land on those blocks. Hands are nice and firm. Fingers spread wide into the ground. From here, we can stay. Make sure those shoulders feel really supported on the blocks. Tuck the toes, and if this feels okay, start lifting the hips. Really high on the toes, start walking the hands in, and maybe we stop here. Top of the head to the ground. We have this kind of shelf we created with our hands being like a 90-degree angle, kind of like chaturanga arms. Spread the fingers wide. Maybe we bring one knee towards one elbow shelf and the other one towards the other one. Maybe lift one foot off at a time, or both. Maybe we stay right here. Bringing the toes down, bringing the knees down, sitting back and slowly lifting up the chest. You want to go slow here, so instead of just going upside down and then right back up to a vertical, we take our time here, kind of letting your chest lift up very slowly, or even you can stay in a child's pose variation for a moment, just to get everything back to normal, and then when you're ready, you can sit all the way up. So we've got, that is our tripod headstand. From lifting those knees, you can always send the legs straight up, hug the knees into the chest. However you like, that's just another way to get started. Another version of that would be just using your hands. So again, just like the rabbit, we're going to have our hands supported, elbows down. We want to make sure that our elbows are always right the same length of our shoulder. So grab for opposite elbows to find kind of where your elbows should be placed, and then bringing your hands out or interlacing them here. So coming down into that rabbit, interlace the hands, top of the head to the ground. If it feels good, lift the hips up. Now keep walking your heels in so much until we feel the hips over the hip, the hips over the shoulder. Then maybe hug one knee, maybe hug the other. Maybe straighten one leg, maybe straighten the other. Glue the legs together, really point through the toes, hug in the core. And come down the way you came, or holding a little pike before landing back down. Again, always take a rest in child's pose for at least a breath or two before slowly coming all the way back up. Nice, so those are a few examples of how to get into that Sirsasana headstand, maybe tripod version with just your hands, or maybe the whole forearms down. This way is a little bit more stable. So next we'll move on to our Bakasana, our crow pose. So remember in the beginning of class when we were hugging those elbows in, connecting to our thighs here, our knees to our forearm or our upper arms. We're going to try that again, now from a forward fold. So we're going to want to have one block in front of us and one block behind us. We'll be coming into this crow position from a forward fold. We're going to first begin by bringing our toes to the back. So find your forward fold, a little deeper bend into the knees here. Separate the feet hip distance apart. Separate the fingers really wide as you press into the ground. So make some space for your body here. If you have a belly, I like to open up my legs wide, shimmy my belly in between the thighs, and then close them back into a neutral position, neutral hip position. We'll start by bending the knees a lot, shifting the weight forward. Our gaze is always going to be forward here, so always looking forward. If we look down, we might fall down. So shifting the weight forward, lifting the heels, place one foot at a time onto that block. Keep your gaze looking forward, always extending the neck long. And then coming on back down whenever you like. We'll land in a malasana, a yogi squat. Heels slightly in, toes slightly out, hanging out in that squat pose for a moment. There is a difference between this crow position and a flying frog. So a lot of the times people can access the crow by doing flying frog, which is bringing the knees on the outside of the arms. So bringing it on top of your arms, you may bruise easily. You might find a lot of bruises there. So instead of bringing the knees directly onto the arms, you can bring the knees outside of the arms and kind of hug in your mullabandha, those bathroom muscles, that root lock, to keep your hips nice and high. So we can keep practicing with the toes on the block. We're going to add in that block in the top for our head to rest on, our forehead to rest on. A lot of the times I find my students a little nervous to do this pose because they don't want to face plant on the ground. So laying a bolster or a blanket or having the block in front of you is going to just help you be a little fearless in this pose. So you know you have a soft landing and you won't face plant. So same thing, we're getting back into this from your forward fold, deep bend into the knees. We are going to be placing our forehead on that block just for some balance, but don't dump all of your weight into that block. Keep engaging the mullabandha, those bathroom muscles, that root lock, as we continue to keep our gaze forward. So finding the placement perfect for that block, right where your head is going to be resting. Then bringing the head to the block, lightly forehead to the block. You can keep your toes on the block behind you or hug one in, hug the other one in. Now, keeping the gaze looking forward, maybe the head only lands on the block for a quick second. Don't rely on it too much. There, the blocks are our friends. So, totally using these props throughout our class will just help us give this that extra comfort, that extra boost that we need. So next we're going to use the handstand helper. There's also another version of this called the feet up. You can get this on the Amazon or quick Google search anywhere of headstand helper or feet up. You will find this contraption. Flat, soft surface for your shoulders to rest upon and handles to grip on. So for this, I'm going to come again into kind of a folding like position. Hands will grip on the handles here. Tuck the chin a lot and place your head right in the middle of that hole that is already there. Your shoulders and your upper back are going to be rested comfortably on that cushion. So again, avoiding just kicking straight up, we're going to hug one knee, hug the other, or reach those toes up until we can kind of float our feet off the ground. Here, you could use this for exercises. You can practice some crunches here if you hug your knees in, find some little ab crunches. You can stay still, just practicing your stand. Always gently coming down, nice and slowly, and taking a pause before we jump right back up into standing. Kind of hanging out, maybe in a childlike position before we bring our head all the way up back through to center.
So that's a fun find. I'll link to those things in my bio or in the description of this class. After being upside down a while, we'll want to just relax, close the eyes, let your spine sit up nice and straight, and breathe deeply here. However long it takes for you to find that equilibrium again, come back into center. Being sure to try out some of the Ginkgo Biloba if you ever have any trouble with vertigo, or if you'd like to improve your memory a little bit. Always consult your doctor before ingesting or obtaining any of these plant medicines. Thank you all so much for joining me. This is Mishi Cat. Peace and love.